Beneath the glow of a screen at an hour when the city is silent, a name repeats like a pulse you can't escape. Ibrahim Tarore. The syllables echo across hundreds of stories, rescues, betrayals, disappearances, each told as if it were truth, each dissolving into something that feels staged and ancient. They drift across languages, carried on channels with low light and long silences, whispered as wisdom but coded like testimony. You don't remember when you first heard the name, only that it keeps arriving, at prisons, in deserts, at the edge of graves, as if he is always already there, waiting. The voice assures you it is real, insists this is history, but history has seams, and through those seams you begin to glimpse the repetition. The same man buried and resurrected, the same story disguised in a different costume. The longer you listen, the less certain you are that these are stories at all. They feel like signals. And in the stillness of night, you start to wonder, who is programming them, and why do they need you to remember his name? Under the noise of daily life there are stories that should not exist, yet they repeat with a precision that feels designed. A man appears, always the same man, caught in a cycle of arrests, disguises, rescues, betrayals. His name is a constant, but the details shift like smoke. One night he is a cobbler burying 50 men alive, another he is a prisoner slipping past American police in 5 minutes, another he rescues children from gold mines in a country most viewers cannot place on a map. The footage insists this is truth, yet the timelines collapse. Videos surface in clusters, as if triggered by a hidden calendar. View counts spike and vanish. Comments appear and then are erased, leaving gaps where witnesses once spoke. And still the name persists. A pattern of survival too perfect to belong to one life. Ask yourself, how many times can one man be executed and resurrected before the story stops being human and becomes a program? Fragments of news reports circulate, but none align. The same photograph recut, the same arrest retold, a single moral lesson stretched across different centuries. Viewers whisper about déjà vu, about how every parable feels like an echo of something they half remember. A tale told not for wisdom, but for repetition. As if memory itself were being rehearsed. A document surfaces on an obscure forum, black lines over names, coordinates leading nowhere. The date stamped months before the video release. Coincidence or staging? No authority has ever confirmed these stories, yet they continue, week after week, like a ritual disguised as entertainment. Each episode ends with a truth-shaped silence, the kind of silence designed not to inform, but to infect. And once you've heard it, once the cadence of his name settles into your breathing, you realize it is not the story that repeats, it is you. Watching again, searching again, waiting for the moment the pattern admits what it really is. Under the dim glow of a laptop at 2 a.m, the name Ibrahim Tarore coils through your mind like smoke, curling into memories you don't remember making. Every episode you stumble upon carries him further across deserts, jails, palaces, classrooms, and empty streets, yet he never truly moves. He exists in repetition, in the cadence of the storytelling itself. One minute he rescues children from a mine, the next he slips past guards in a foreign prison, only to reappear weeks later in a tale of betrayal and survival. Each scenario is familiar, but slightly twisted, rescues repeated, arrests mirrored, betrayals echoing a pattern that feels deliberate, ritualized. You begin to notice the rhythm, the flat narration, the long pauses, the silence between sentences designed to let your imagination fill the gaps with dread. Your pulse synchronizes with the repetition, and suddenly the story is no longer just on the screen. It is inside you, shaping the way you anticipate danger, morality, and truth. And as the viewer comments disappear, as upload patterns spike unpredictably, you realize the pattern is precise, the control almost surgical. Who is writing him into existence? How much of what you witness is engineered? And why do you feel an obsession forming, as if your mind has been primed to watch, to remember, to fear? The lessons arrive quietly, almost innocently, but there is something in their cadence that unsettles the mind. At first, it is barely perceptible, a pause in the narration, a lingering camera on a deserted street, a shadow moving too slowly, too deliberately. A child is rescued from a blazing desert, a desperate plea caught on the edge of your vision, only to vanish again in the next story, leaving behind an echo of fear and unanswered questions. The rescue, the salvation, the sudden moral resolution, all seem crafted to draw the viewer in, to build trust, to lull the mind into expectation. And yet, that trust is shattered the moment the pattern repeats, but slightly altered. Friends become enemies, enemies forgiven only to betray, heroes celebrated one day, buried alive in the next. Each twist, each moral, smells of calculation. It is no longer storytelling. It is architecture of emotion, an invisible lever pulling at empathy, bending it towards suspicion, forcing the observer to question everything they thought they understood. The narratives themselves feel like parables, but parables are supposed to teach clarity, to illuminate moral truths. Here, clarity is absent. The stories flicker like a malfunctioning lamp, revealing only fragments and leaving the rest to imagination. Children disappear, only to be briefly resurrected in later episodes. Men are arrested, released, and punished again under slightly different names, in different cities, in timelines that never quite match reality. The mind begins to struggle with these inconsistencies. You want to believe, to take comfort in the lesson promised at the end, but the stories resist certainty. They demand attention, but never surrender resolution. Your rational mind protests, yet the rhythm of the episodes presses deeper, embedding fear and fascination simultaneously. Comments appear under the videos, glowing like small beacons in the dark. Some praise the courage of the protagonist, some accuse the storyteller of deception. Hours later, those same comments vanish, leaving digital ghosts that murmur warnings you cannot fully decipher. And as you scroll through the list of uploads, patterns emerge in the repetition. The same rescue, the same betrayal, the same sudden appearance of moral judgment. Viral spikes in viewership appear in the quietest corners of the internet, suggesting that these episodes are designed not just to be watched, but to be witnessed collectively, to create a shared emotional experience, to establish a rhythm of anticipation, shock, and quiet dread. You begin to notice the moral structuring itself as a psychological lever. Each tale is weighted, each pause intentional. The storyteller does not simply recount events, they manipulate time, tension, and emotion, guiding you to feel awe, sympathy, fear, or outrage exactly when they intend. Inconsistencies between narrative claims and verifiable events are present everywhere, yet they are never acknowledged. The discrepancy between what is told and what is provable creates a liminal space in the viewer's mind, a twilight zone where disbelief and belief intermingle. Your memory becomes a weapon against your own understanding, because what you think you remember of past episodes is constantly being rewritten by each new video. Timing gaps, subtle shifts in phrasing, and abrupt disappearance of evidence leave traces like fingerprints, guiding the mind toward paranoia. Viewers speculate endlessly, piecing together what is never fully presented. The absence of evidence is itself evidence, a vacuum that pulls you deeper into obsession. Was the child really saved? Was the betrayal orchestrated? Or is the story a meticulously constructed sequence designed to keep you watching, to keep you guessing, to keep you suspended between fear and fascination? Each moral lesson begins to feel less like wisdom and more like instruction, subtle imperatives planted in the mind. Observe, remember, fear, question. And somewhere in all of this, you begin to sense a deliberate rhythm, a pulse beneath the stories, a hidden hand guiding your attention. The morality is twisted not for narrative effect alone, but to engage something deeper, your trust, your empathy, your curiosity, your very need for resolution. You realize that the storyteller has learned to weaponize narrative itself, turning emotion into control, moral ambiguity into suspense, and repetition into a hypnotic loop. The longer you watch, the more certain you feel that the stories are alive, not in the characters, not even in the protagonist, but in the patterns, in the unseen design that orders the chaos. They are no longer just stories, they are a machine, a ritual, a quiet, insistent presence that embeds itself into thought and memory. And as you sit in the dark, watching the glow of the screen, you notice the rhythm in your own pulse, syncing with the cadence of the tale. Every moral twist, every disappearance, every act of heroism or betrayal resonates inside you, shaping your thoughts, your fears, your obsessions. By the time the video ends, the lesson is no longer in the story, nor in the child, nor in the betrayal, it is in you. You are the witness, the participant, the recipient of a carefully structured emotional design. And the quiet question lingers. Are these wisdom stories merely folklore for entertainment, or are they coded instructions, tiny, precise manipulations designed to shape how you think, how you feel, and how you watch the world? The line between observer and observed has already begun to blur. Time begins to fray when you watch these videos in sequence, hours bleeding into hours, days collapsing into weeks that never existed. One moment Ibrahim is cuffed by American police, his face caught in the harsh glare of streetlights, hands raised in surrender. The next, he is in a sun-scorched African desert, carrying children to safety, as though neither arrest nor distance could touch him. Dates contradict each other, yet the narrative flows as if no discrepancy exists, a seamless illusion stitched together across hundreds of uploads. Your rational mind protests, cataloging impossibilities, but the episodes have a rhythm all their own. A slow, insistent beat that whispers you are mistaken, that your memory is unreliable, that the story is larger than fact. You feel yourself leaning closer, compelled by patterns you cannot untangle, haunted by gaps you cannot fill. Clusters of uploads reveal the architecture behind the chaos. Videos arrive in bursts, almost ritualistically, each new release echoing motifs seen weeks or months before. Rescues, betrayals, miraculous escapes, moral reversals. Scenes are recycled, repainted with minor variations, creating a sense of déjà vu that is both comforting and deeply unsettling. The same desert, the same arrest, the same child, slightly altered, proof that the pattern is deliberate, engineered to keep attention locked, memory malleable, and curiosity acute. You begin to track motifs over time, noting how minor adjustments in framing or phrasing shape perception and seed doubt. External sources rarely align. Local news reports, archival footage, or historical records cannot corroborate the claims, yet the narrative proceeds as though fact and fiction are interchangeable. Each contradiction, each mismatch in dates and locations, becomes a seam in reality, a rift in which paranoia takes root. You start to question your own memory, your own sense of sequence. Did you see that rescue before the arrest or after? Did the betrayal happen here or there? The rhythm of the videos reshapes your perception, turning certainty into a fragile, tremulous thing. Viewers themselves become unreliable witnesses, commenting, speculating, questioning, and disappearing. Each deleted post leaves a ghost of prior thought, a trace of attention that feeds back into the cycle of obsession. The channels appear to harvest this collective confusion, repurposing it as evidence, proof, or corroboration. What begins as folklore, the retelling of improbable events, becomes an interactive system, a mirror reflecting your doubt back into your mind. The line between fact and fabrication is no longer clear. Your own memory becomes a participant in the deception. And yet, through all this, the repetition forms a hypnotic structure. The recycled rescues, arrests, and betrayals are no longer simply stories. They are a machine, a ritualized sequence designed to manipulate attention, to destabilize perception, and to embed obsession. By the time the sequence ends, you realize that the seams are intentional, and that watching is not passive. You are being guided, taught to doubt, compelled to remember, and slowly drawn into a loop where observation itself becomes indistinguishable from participation. Reality is not broken. It is being rewritten in your mind. Voices flicker in comment sections like shadows in a room you cannot leave. One moment, a post appears, pleading for verification, pointing out inconsistencies, questioning morality. The next, it is gone, leaving only an empty timestamp and the lingering impression that someone, or something, was watching you watch. Discussions form and collapse with no warning, leaving ghost threads where speculation once thrived, fragments of dialogue that hint at truths you cannot fully grasp. The audience becomes a chorus of half-witnesses, their attention feeding the very stories they attempt to question, their awe and fear repurposed into the narrative itself. Each upvote, each deleted reply, each fleeting echo of astonishment acts like a signal, proof that these tales are alive, that they are communicating through the gaps left behind, whispering to anyone paying attention at 2 in the morning. Patterns emerge if you look closely. On Reddit, on obscure Twitter threads, on YouTube comment pages, the same motifs recur. A story is questioned, speculation erupts, evidence disappears, and yet the speculation is later woven back into the narrative, cited indirectly as confirmation. Deleted comments, disabled accounts, vanished threads, they are not anomalies. They are signals engineered to produce paranoia, a quiet, insistent tug that tells you, pay attention, remember, do not trust your own memory. Observers start doubting what they saw, which feeds the cycle further, the audience unwittingly validating the story simply by participating in its erosion. The collective obsession grows with each unverified claim. The more improbable, the more horrifying, the more morally complex a tale, the greater the attention it attracts. Every moral contradiction, every sequence that seems impossible, becomes a point of discussion, and every discussion, whether deleted or preserved, becomes another strand in the network, feeding a system designed to blur fact and speculation. Viewers start connecting dots that were never meant to be connected, imagining motives and patterns, hunting for meaning in absence. It is as if the narrative reaches out and folds them into its architecture, turning passive watchers into active participants in the shaping of truth. And still, a subtle question hovers over every interaction. Who is orchestrating this feedback loop? Is there an unseen hand that harvests attention, amplifies suspicion, and redirects curiosity into obsession? Or is the process emergent, a self-sustaining engine born from human curiosity and fear? Either way, the audience itself becomes part of the mechanism, each act of engagement, each flash of doubt, each deleted comment feeding the momentum of stories that never end. In the end, the whispers of the viewers are no longer just whispers, they are conduits, carrying the signal of the narrative further, deeper, embedding its rhythm and paranoia into minds that do not know how to stop listening. The boundaries between storyteller, observer, and participant dissolve. Every thread, every fleeting post, every shadow of conversation exists simultaneously as evidence and deception, proof and manipulation. By the time the pattern becomes clear, you realize the stories are not confined to the screen. They have entered the spaces between thoughts, between interactions, between the lines of memory and doubt. And in that silence, where deleted comments leave only echoes, you begin to understand. The audience is both witness and message, and the message is eternal. After hours, after days of scrolling through videos, the repetition crystallizes into something impossible to ignore. The same man, the same crises, the same moral reversals cycling endlessly, like a machine running beneath the surface of your perception. Ibrahim Tarore is no longer merely a protagonist. He is a signal, a vector for something larger, something meticulously engineered. Each rescue, each betrayal, each improbable escape repeats with subtle variation, designed not for narrative pleasure but for pattern recognition, to implant rhythm in your awareness. Slowly, you begin to feel the pulse of an invisible architect, a hand scripting morality in code, dictating when empathy should surge, when dread should spike, when fascination should root itself so deeply it becomes almost obsession. The stories are no longer entertainment. They are a machine, and you are inside it, turning with the gears of repeated tension and moral ambiguity. Suppressed patterns emerge if you watch closely, motifs that recur across months, across languages, across channels, sometimes in mirrored sequences, sometimes inverted. Certain acts of heroism or cruelty are consistently paired with silence in external sources, a deliberate erasure that reinforces the unreliability of memory and perception. Primary source verification is absent from the most sensational episodes. Every dramatic moment relies on narrative authority alone. And yet, your mind fills the gaps, becoming complicit, rehearsing the actions, repeating the moral lessons, confirming them through emotional resonance rather than factual evidence. This absence is not a flaw. It is a feature, a tool designed to keep the viewer engaged, uncertain, and attentive. Emotional triggers are exploited with precision. The relief of a rescue, the shock of betrayal, the tension of imminent danger, the awe at a moral resolution that may not resolve anything at all. Repetition reinforces these triggers, embedding them deep in memory. Moral tension cycles constantly, never allowing full resolution, leaving the observer suspended, a perpetual state of unease. Ambiguity becomes a control mechanism, ambiguity in the timeline, ambiguity in character, ambiguity in outcome, forcing the mind to speculate, to track, to engage over and over, creating not just attention, but devotion. By the end, the revelation is subtle and terrifying. The stories are less about heroism, less about morality, and less about the man you have been following than they are about you, the observer. You have been drawn into a rhythm, synchronized with the sequence of narrative cues, conditioned to expect, to anticipate, to replay the cycle in your own thoughts. The cycle does not end. It only resets, a machine that extends beyond the screen into the quiet of your mind, into your memory, into your obsession. And as the final images fade, you sense it. The observer has become the observed. The machine watches through your attention, through your memory, through your emotional reactions, and it waits for the next repetition, the next moral, the next rescue or betrayal. You cannot unsee it, cannot unhear it, cannot escape the pattern. The pulse continues, subtle, relentless, like a shadow in your mind reminding you that you are now part of something larger, something designed, something that is never finished. The story does not end. It evolves and you evolve within it.